Ooh, ah, oh. Yeah, let's do this. Hey guys, Jim here. Let's take a moment to just sit back, relax, and have a little bit of a chat. What we're going to talk about today is the recent controversy that's popping up online ever since Microtech made their post about doing a collaboration with a Chinese manufacturer. Now, for those of you that don't know or don't follow me regularly, I am a fan of Microtech knives, but I have been a critic of both Microtech knives and of Tony Marfione. And that's not really a secret. And it's not one of those things where you can love a brand, but you're so blindly in love with them that they can do no wrong. I don't believe in shit like that. What I do believe in, though, is trying to keep things from getting out of control once they hit the internet. Because everybody's going to have an opinion, and that's completely fine. Everybody's entitled to their opinions. But you need to form your opinion based on some sort of knowledge, of facts, of anything that's going to be available to you, instead of just spouting off like a mindless troll. Now, when I first engaged on this topic, and I did so online, I was a little more heavy-handed with it. What I'm going to try to do here is be a little bit more respectful of others' opinions and try to understand. I'm trying to put myself in the position that a lot of other people are in. There are a lot of people that have been huge fans of Microtech since they were founded in 1994, or for the past 10 years, or past 5 years, or whatever it is. And they've spent a lot of money both with Microtech knives and Marfione Customs, Tony's custom variations of those knives. And as such, one of the things that a lot of people take pride in is the fact that they're made in America. And that really is a big deal. I've spent my entire life buying nothing but American-made cars. And I've only recently changed from that because the quality of some of these other foreign car brands are getting much, much higher, and you're getting greater value in some cases than a lot of the American-made cars. So I understand the whole mentality of buy USA made. I understand the mentality of supporting US made brands and not supporting Chinese brands. And we're going to get into that a little bit deeper in a few minutes. But one has to start to disassociate the Chinese government from the Chinese people that live there. You can't judge the people that live there by the government that they're living under. And there is no better time to cite an example in the U.S. than right now. We don't want people associating us as citizens with the mindset of the idiot in the Oval Office right now, or his loudmouth sidekick with the annoying hyena laugh. We don't want people to associate us around the world with people like Pelosi and Schumer and things like that. So it is important to show that you understand the difference between supporting a Chinese business and the Chinese government, even though in the back end, at some point, they are going to be connected. Another thing to keep in mind is Microtech is not doing this as like they're switching their entire production over to China. They've announced a collaboration, which for the very beginning right here, let's talk about the fact that they're not doing this secretively. I can tell you right now, there are a lot of knives in your personal collection right now that you think are 100% made in the USA that absolutely are not. Whether there are components that came in from China, whether parts were actually cut for them in China, then shipped to them to complete. There are a lot of different variables involved, and a lot of these brands and even custom knife makers that do not disclose this absolutely do have Chinese-made components, parts, or even in some cases entirely built knives, and you have no idea. They're lying to you about it. And this is something that a lot of us in the industry know, and we don't really talk about because, hey, I really don't want to get blacklisted is the basic mentality. So that kind of stuff is kept kind of hush-hush. So first off, Tony was very forthright and said, hey, we're doing a collaboration with a Chinese knife brand. I believe it's Reich Knife, if I'm not mistaken. It's either Reich or WHAAAT. Either way, they're both great companies that produce a really, really good high-quality product. So he came right up front and said, here is a collaboration that we are doing with a Chinese brand. So at the very least, you've got to give him the respect for being completely forthright, where a lot of brands are not. Number two, it's a collaboration. They're not sending their entire production over to China. Nobody is losing their job in order to produce these knives in China. They're going to maintain, as far as I'm aware, their full production schedule in the United States. And they're adding on top of that an alternative for people that's a Chinese-made knife, that's a collaboration. And so far, they've only announced one knife, and that's the SOCOM. They're calling it the SOCOM Bravo. Looks like a SOCOM Elite. And the one they pictured was the Tanto or TE, the Tanto Edge. So we're only seeing right now one. Is that going to certainly expand to other models? Yeah, I definitely think so. And I think it's a smart move. Because we've heard people, whether they're brand new into the knife game or they've been collecting for a while, and they complain about Microtech pricing and then, of course, Marfione custom pricing. You go to buy a SOCOM Elite, you're going to spend around $300 and up. And you can spend as much as $1,500 on the custom-made version. So for a lot of people, they're never going to own the custom. For a lot of people, they can't justify the expense of the standard production version. So what is the alternative here? The alternative now is to break away from the very expensive American manufacturing, do a collaboration, okay, which is going to cost Tony very, very little as compared to what he would spend, manufacturing right here in the U.S., like with this one. He's going to be able to package them cheaper. He's going to be able to do everything a lot more price conscious, is a good way to put it. I don't want to say cheap because this is not going to be a cheaply made knife, so I don't want to place that word on there. So now, instead of paying $300 plus, I would expect to pay probably around the $250 range. That doesn't sound like a huge savings, but when you think about it, the SOCOM Elite was already one of the more bargain-priced knives that Microtech made. So I wouldn't expect a huge savings on there, but enough that maybe it would tip the scales in the direction of a purchase for a lot of people that are on the edge there. So it's a collaboration. They're not moving their production to China. And a lot of people are saying, well, if you're going to do it overseas, why support the Chinese Communist government? Why not do it in Japan or in Taiwan like Spyderco does? Well, by going to Taiwan, you're not saving a tremendous amount of money between U.S. production and Taiwanese production. So there probably wasn't enough room there to be able to offer a really fantastic price. And Japanese, you're not really saving anything because you're getting, the Japanese quality is so friggin' fantastic. Another thing you have to think about is, especially for Taiwan, there are probably not a lot of OEM manufacturers that are available to you in Taiwan. I'm sure there are quite a few in Japan, and obviously there's a lot in China, but I don't think there are that many that are in Taiwan. At least I don't know of any. So going back to supporting the Chinese government, you don't have to go down in the comments below and start yelling at me. Yes, I do know that any large-scale factory, any large-scale company, the government has their own people in the facility managing or at least controlling the books, and they are taking profit. Absolutely, there's no way around it. But this is how the Chinese people have to live. If for some reason you were born in China instead of the United States and you wanted to have your own business, that's the way that you have to do it. You don't have a choice. You probably don't have the ability to move, or maybe even want or desire to move from your native land to go to the United States where you don't have to worry about that. So you can't fault a business owner, let's say a knife brand that's in China, for having for supporting their government, because they don't have that choice. It's either that or they go work for somebody else, make almost no money, hardly enough to live, and that company is still supporting the government. So they're in a no-win situation. But there are some really, really good people that own businesses there that are not, they're doing it for, obviously, to support their families, but because they love the industry. I'll use David Deng from WHAAAT as an example. David is an absolutely fantastic person, takes very, very, very good care of his workers. He's a very fair person, and he's a good businessman. The fact that he happens to be Chinese, living in China, and having to have at least some Chinese government hands in his business is something he can't avoid. So don't judge every single Chinese manufacturing company based on the fact that we're giving money to China. That's not really the way it is. It is, but it's unavoidable. And there's no reason to think that Chinese people shouldn't be able to support their families and follow their dreams just because they live in a communist society. We shouldn't be putting that burden on them anyway. Another thing is, Chinese companies aren't funding, or excuse me, knife companies aren't funding a Chinese uprising against us. China owns almost $1.1 trillion of the U.S. national debt. So that's about 4% of our national debt is already owned by China. And that's second only to Japan. Japan owns more. So our government is already funding the Chinese government far more than any individual brands are. Now also keep in mind, they already produce 90.6% of the global supply of computers. That's the entire world, man. 90% of the entire world's computers. You're already spending money, giving money to China anyway. When you get to cell phones, 70.6% of all cell phones are made in China. 80% of all air conditioners. That air conditioner sitting outside of your house, probably made in China. So if you're gonna really go out there and blast companies and blast people for, you shouldn't support China, you shouldn't make in China, you're typing that on a Chinese-made cell phone. The air conditioning in your house is probably Chinese-made. The computer that you have in your office is almost guaranteed to be Chinese. So you are not able to completely avoid supporting China as it is. What you're doing is you're adding to that huge economy that they have, because they own the world's supply pretty much, by buying a knife from a brand that might make, I don't know, 1/100th of what the cell phone brand or the computer companies are. You're not really moving that needle. And you're certainly never going to come close to what our own U.S. government has already given them. So do keep that in mind. As I said to somebody on Instagram, you're yelling about a raindrop in a hurricane. Don't even worry about that. Now, on the flip side of that, I understand everything that we buy as a consumer is a personal choice. If you say, hey, you know what, Microtech doing anything at all in China, I can't support that, I'll no longer buy their knives, well, that's your personal choice. There's no reason to rant and rave and scream and go crazy about it. But over the course of your collecting life, I promise you, you have bought Chinese-made products that you were completely unaware of. At least Tony's being transparent. He's telling you, we're going to do this collaboration. He seems excited about it, so there must be a reason why. The quality is going to be fantastic. We already know this. And Microtech's quality has been up and down over the past, let's just say 10 years. And their customer service, their warranty work has been up and down as people have come and gone in that company. And I think what they're doing now is they're getting all their ducks in a row, and I think the quality is better than it has been for a while. I think the consistency is there. And I think that The customer service is getting better. At least you're hearing back from people a little bit more often. So, here's another thing to keep in mind. A lot of you guys know that I ride a Harley. I love my Harley. I've owned many brands. I've owned Japanese bikes. I've owned Italian bikes. I've owned American bikes. And I'm not really particularly a brand loyalist, but I am on my 4th Harley. And I could still remember the old, and you'll hear this from the younger crowd, the old farts that would scream and yell and rant and rave if Harley did something that wasn't completely traditional that they didn't like. And when it was discovered that a large percentage of the components in these motorcycles were made in China, well, it pissed a lot of people off. And I'm sure there were a lot of people that stopped buying Harley and never ever went back. But Harley still has good sales. Yeah, they're suffering as a brand, but it's not because of the Chinese connection. It's a whole other bowl of wax. But the thing is, a lot of people got really pissed off when there were less components made in the U.S. being farmed out to China, and people were talking about U.S. jobs that were being lost and everything else. And the people that made those statements had a good point. And the people that still defended Harley also had a good point. And it's the same thing here. Am I going to stop buying Harley Davidsons because they're not 100% made in the United States anymore? No. I'm still getting a quality product. I'm not getting a value. You're paying top dollar for it no matter what. But I feel like I'm getting what I pay for. I feel like against the competition, I'm getting what I want to get for the money that I'm spending. And if there are Chinese bolts in there and there's a Chinese starter motor and there's this and there's that, there's nothing I can do about that. I could go buy an Indian, I suppose, but apples to apples, a lot of the models don't line up, and I prefer Harley. It's just the way it is. So there's going to be that give and take. And keep in mind also, a lot of the U.S. brands that you support, the product that they're manufacturing, that might be made in the United States. But that hat that you're wearing to support the brand, that t-shirt that you're wearing, the mug that you drink your breakfast coffee out of, all the swag, the accessories, the keychains, the lanyard beads, all these other things, there's a good chance that they're having those made in China. Especially the merchandise, the t-shirts and the hats and stuff. Why? Because maybe they don't want to charge you $35 for a t-shirt. They want to charge you $25 and still make a profit. What are you going to do? So that's just the way it is. Listen, I get why certain people are upset. I get why you feel that you've been misled to a degree, because for years and years and years, it's always been Microtech proudly made in the USA. And that really is a big deal. It's a great thing to be able to say. But the difference between a consumer and a business owner, particularly one that owns a large-scale business, is the understanding of what it costs to run that business, to be profitable, and to still offer prices that the consumer is going to be comfortable with. I can tell you right now, if Tony treated Microtech like Rolex, and every year in January there was a 10% price increase without fail every single year, no matter what, then I'm sure he would never even consider doing something like this, because every year his profit margin would widen just a little bit. Or at the very least, it would make up for any deficits that come from inflation or come from the cost of the raw materials going up. I mean, my God, steel is so much more expensive now than it was just a couple of years ago. So, as we run our businesses, our expenses continue to go up, but the consumer always wants our price to remain the same. And that's not always possible. So keep that in mind as well. This is something that if he says, you know what, I'm going to raise my prices 10, 15% every single year on January, boom, then you wouldn't have to look for any other alternatives. But I think that's a smart business move. It may be detrimental to his business because of the very rabid fan base that says, hey, one of the main reasons we buy Microtech is they're fucking US made. Well, now they're not going to be U.S. made 100%, so I'm going to abandon it altogether. What you should say is, you know what? If you're that much about Microtech being U.S. made, don't support the collaborations. Continue to buy what you enjoy buying. Buy those 100% U.S. made knives, enjoy them, and carry them and have the pride knowing where they were made, and just ignore the Chinese made knife. But I think for a lot of people, that's going to be impossible. I think that they're just going to be so bullheaded, for whatever reason, justified or not, that they're just not going to do that. So I think as this continues to build, when we get toward the release date, we see these knives come out, and then maybe future collaborations are announced, I think it's going to get a hell of a lot uglier. That's just the way it is. I'm not saying that I'm particularly normally the voice of reason, but I kind of wanted to put my thoughts out there and see if any of you felt the same way. You know, yeah, it would be great if they could remain, 100% U.S. made. But here's the thing. They really are. They're doing something different. They're offering a collaboration, a well-announced collaboration that will probably even be in different packaging. There will be no way that there is going to be confusion between their collaborative efforts and their standard production. So I really don't know that it's that big of a deal, to be honest with you. Now, if Tony had gotten on Instagram and jumped on there and said, hey, times they are a-changing, and we're going to start sending out 30% of our production overseas and to eventually do all of it overseas, then I would understand the outrage. I would understand why people would be so angry. But that's just not the case. That's not what we're seeing. We're seeing right now just one knife, but we're seeing a collaboration. We're not seeing production being moved there. We're not seeing people lose jobs as a result. They're, as far as I'm aware, maintaining, their production schedule. They're going to make just as many knives this year as they made last year. And they're adding more knives on top of it by doing those in China. So that's just kind of the way I look at it. I think it is different when you're a business owner, when you run your own business, you understand the expenses, and you're trying to satisfy everybody. You're trying to satisfy your bank account. You're trying to satisfy all of your employees and maintain your employees, offer them benefits, all these wonderful things. And you're trying to satisfy the consumer who never, ever wants to pay more money. Now, there's going to be a few of you that are going to go right to the comments and go, I would gladly pay an extra 10% every year if I knew that I were... You're rare. I would do the same thing. I have no problem if this $600 knife were all of a sudden $660 next year, just to make sure that it was only made in the U.S., sure, I would have no problem at all paying an extra $60 to buy that $600 knife. No problem at all. But not everybody can, and not everybody can justify doing that. There are guys out there that, to buy a $300 knife, they may have to save up for 3 or 4 months to do it because they have other financial responsibilities, or they don't make a lot of money, or COVID, or this or that, any number of things. So that extra savings, even if it's only 10%, just to use a random figure, could be a deal breaker for them. And there's no reason they shouldn't be able to own what they want to own. And lastly, I don't know if this was part of the motive or not, but somebody brought this up on my Instagram post, that it's kind of a genius way to stop or slow down the Chinese clones of Microtech knives that are coming out of China if you yourself are manufacturing certain pieces in China. I don't really know if there's any leverage there. I don't know if it really helps them slow that down, but if it does, and if that was part of the motivation, then that is pretty brilliant. Listen, you can like Tony or not like Tony. It's not going to change his sleep pattern at night. But one thing you can't argue is he's a smart businessman. He grew this business from nothing to being one of the largest brands in the world when it comes to tactical knives. And there are very few big brands that are even in existence that sell at the level that they do. But Tony has managed to find unique way of marketing. I still remember in the 90s, late 90s, where'd you see Microtech knives? We weren't on the internet or anything. You saw them in gun shops. You never saw knives in gun shops. Occasionally you would see Cold Steel and Benchmade, but you didn't see premium higher quality knives in a gun store. And then one day, Microtech knives started appearing all over the place, at least where I was. I lived in Florida at the time. At that time, Microtech was based in Florida. And if you went into a gun range in South Florida in the 90s, early 2000s, you saw Microtech knives. And you looked at a knife and went, Jesus, $700 for an out-the-front automatic. That's a lot of money. Nobody did that. Tony started doing that. Tony did a lot of stuff that changed the way the industry works, and whether you want to credit him for it or not, doesn't matter. The fact is, he's become extremely successful at what he does. So, I hardly believe that this is going to be a misstep on his part. This is something that I think that he would have calculated over years and thought about all the logistics, all the backlash from customers, all the differencing in the pricing and the profit, and how everything was going to fit together like jigsaw pieces. So I don't think it was a decision that he made lightly, and I'm sure his first choice was not to do any Chinese-made knives. But I think the way the world is working, the way the industries are working, manufacturing costs, raw material costs, labor costs, so many things adding up, the way that they are now, I think that this may have been a very good move for Microtech, and the money that they save, in addition to the extra profit that they're likely to make, may afford them to do more amazing American-made products that we simply aren't aware of yet. So anyway, that's my thoughts on it. Please give me your thoughts down below. Try not to be rude. Try not to be a dick. We have enough of that shit going on. Try to be respectful of others down there, because this is a heated topic. And I understand why some people feel personally attacked that Microtech has chosen to do this. So I get that. But try to choke some of that down and have a good conversation down below. Let me know your thoughts. Are you more on the way that I'm thinking? Or are you more on the fanboy way of thinking, where this is the biggest travesty of the world and you don't know how you're going to go on living? Either way, let me know down below. Thanks, guys. I'll see y'all on the next video.